Nick and Laura are coming back for the birth of their child at home, so you need to leave, Antonio said loudly. Leave? Me? When I asked back, Antonio nodded with a smile. I've always thought things would be better without you. I hate people who always throw around the right arguments like you do. There are other women besides you. Just because we've been together for so long doesn't mean we have to stay together in the future. Antonio was the one who made a bold statement. Whatever difficulties he faces from now on are none of my concern. He probably thinks he'll forget about it after a good night's sleep, but not this time. He should take responsibility for his own words. I'm Scarlett, 55 years old. Right now, I live with my husband, Antonio. Antonio is 60, 5 years my senior. So, he recently retired. Antonio said, Maybe I'll spend my time enjoying my fishing hobby now. He seemed happy about it. Meanwhile, I run a small apparel company, thankfully making a decent profit. Currently, we can afford to live in a high-rent condominium, thanks to my job. Antonio was supportive, but after his retirement, he changed. First, his daily routine shifted. Now always at home, Antonio had many days without plans. This led to a more lax lifestyle, staying up late watching TV or sleeping past noon. Occasionally, that's okay. But when it goes on for days, it's concerning. I suggested, shouldn't you keep a regular schedule, especially at your age? But Antonio seemed unconcerned. Instead, I've worked hard all my life, let me be. Don't tell me what to do, he retorted. Another issue was Antonio's boredom. He had few friends and his only hobby was fishing alone. He seemed increasingly idle after retiring. And he began nitpicking at my housekeeping. Frankly, I'm not great at domestic chores. Busy with work, I rely heavily on the latest home appliances. A cleaning robot for housekeeping, electric cookers for meals. Antonio didn't like that. Robots can't clean every nook and cranny. Doing it by hand is more thorough. He insisted on me doing things manually. One evening, he complained about dinner. Stews need time and attention, not an electric cooker. Even though he never minded before, now he was imposing his preferences. At worst, stop being lazy. You're so sloppy, he would say. I'd consider his requests if I had the time. But I'm too busy with work. If he's retired and has time, he should do it. When I pointed this out, just because you work doesn't mean you can act superior, he snapped. I couldn't help but understand why some people divorce later in life. Yet, I endured, considering how hard we had worked together. But things escalated due to a particular event. Our son's wife's pregnancy. Our only son, Nick. His wife, Laura, announced her pregnancy. Actually, Nick isn't my biological son. He's Antonio's from a previous marriage. We remarried when Nick was 10. Antonio was ecstatic about the pregnancy announcement. Our first grandchild! Our first grandchild! Yes, it's exciting, I replied, happy too, but Antonio's joy was beyond normal. I think he was experiencing grandparent fever. That's why things turned out this way. Laura, raised by a single mother. I'd like to go back there to give birth. Probably because he said so. Laura grew up in a single-parent household. So this time, my mom is too busy with work, she explained. So Antonio, eager as ever, said, We need to welcome the baby in the best possible way. And he began preparations. That's fine, but he strangely imposed it all on me. This crib, every kind of milk, just in case. Oh, and a lot of diapers. He just barked orders. I was already swamped with work and chores. Even when I made time to prepare, it was never right. No, not like that, he'd complain. No, no, you're saying it's not this. Please, enough. I understand you're excited, but do it yourself. Stop relying on me for everything. He seemed shocked to be challenged. Standing frozen. Our first grandchild, and you act so detached. Right, you're not biologically related to Nick. You don't care about him. That's not true. Don't say such awful things. You're overdoing it. If Laura knew how much you're doing, she might not want to come here. This place doesn't feel relaxing. Antonio tried to respond, but couldn't find the right words. Frustrated, he clenched his teeth and retreated to his room. Damn it! I didn't mean to go that far. His fanaticism had driven me to stubbornness. And being spoken to like that about Nick hurt me too. I want Nick and Laura to relax here. That's why I had to stop Antonio's excesses. Later, I thought about making amends, but Antonio didn't come out of his room. Reluctantly, I looked through the door. I'm sorry about yesterday. I'm going, I said and went to work. That day, I faced numerous work troubles and got home quite late. Dinner was going to be delayed. What should I make? As I thought this on my way home, I found Antonio already sitting at the dining table, waiting. I'm home. Sorry I'm late. I'll make dinner as quickly as I can. There was no reply from Antonio. I moved around busily. Antonio just sat there, staring, as if pressuring me. If he's home anyway, he could have made dinner. Or at least, he didn't need to rush me like this. Finally, I managed to make crispy fish sandwiches and serve them. Sorry for the wait. Let's eat. Antonio immediately started eating his sandwich in silence. Were you that hungry? I sat down and began eating my sandwich. Before I was even halfway through, Antonio had finished eating. He sat up straight and looked at me. What? I asked. Antonio spoke in a low voice. You're all about work, neglecting the housework. What? His unexpected words nearly made me drop my sandwich. What are you talking about? I'm not neglecting anything. Don't act like it's nothing. Like today, just sandwiches? No salad or soup. That's unacceptable. True, I usually serve salad and soup. But today wasn't about being lazy. I hurried because Antonio seemed so eager to eat. I explained, but Antonio wasn't convinced. It's not just that. You always negate everything I say or do. You must think you're better because you're working and I'm retired. That's not how I think at all. Despite my repeated denials, Antonio remained unconvinced. I was getting tired of this pointless argument. Let's stop this. We'll be welcoming Nick and his wife soon. I don't want to greet them with this unpleasant atmosphere. At this, Antonio sneered sarcastically. Ah, right. I've been thinking the same. So, I've found a good solution. A good solution? Puzzled, I tilted my head. Antonio declared loudly. Nick and Laura are coming back for the birth, so you should leave. What? I couldn't believe he was serious. Leave? Me? When I asked again, Antonio nodded with a smile. If you weren't here, things would go smoothly. I've always thought so. I hate people like you who always argue with logic. There are plenty of other women. I was shocked. After decades of marriage, to hear such words. Antonio, carried away, continued to vent his grievances. You lack respect for me, your husband. Always complaining, never just listening. Complaining? I respect your requests as much as I can. It's you who makes unreasonable demands. Shut up. I hate your bossy tone. Just leave. I don't even want to see your face. Antonio slammed the table. It was futile to say more. I said, understood, and returned to my room. The next morning, I called a moving company immediately. After being treated like that, I wasn't going to stay. Fortunately, it wasn't moving season, and I easily scheduled an estimate. I hoped to finish everything while Antonio was out. But he was almost always home. I was worried, but then it seemed like fate intervened. I'm going out tomorrow for a bit. Antonio is the type to forget things overnight. So he spoke to me quite normally. Apparently, Antonio was invited by his fishing buddies and was going for an overnight fishing trip. This was my chance. There was a slightly awkward atmosphere. Maybe even Antonio felt that what he said yesterday was too much. Still, there was no apology from him. He might be hoping to act as if yesterday's words never happened. He's always been like that. Until now, I've been the bigger person, letting things go. But I couldn't just ignore what he said this time. The moving estimate came quickly. I planned to take all the furniture and appliances, but there was less than I thought. The problem was finding a place to move to. But that was easily solved. Someone I knew through work offered to lend me a place. A brand new one, no less. "Are you sure?" I asked again, and they said, "Scarlett, you've been so helpful." So I accepted the offer. I immediately went to see the property. It was more than sufficient, with no issues. I moved everything out while Antonio was away. His harsh words left me without regrets. Perhaps deep down, I had grown tired of life with Antonio. The night after I moved, Antonio called. Here it comes, I thought, and answered the phone. "Hello?" "Hey, Scarlett. What's going on?" Antonio sounded panicked, even over the phone. I almost laughed, but responded calmly. "What do you mean?" "My house, it's empty. What's happening?" "Well, you told me to leave, so I did just that." I had taken everything, from the latest appliances to my favorite dining table. "But I only told you to leave. It's crazy to take everything from someone's house." "What? Leaving them would be crazy. I bought all that with my own money. You never contributed, saying you didn't need them." Antonio fell silent, then said grudgingly, "Fine. Nick and his family are coming tomorrow. Furniture doesn't matter. He'd be surprised to see the place now." "Good. Then it's perfect timing. Say hi to Nick for me." There was no point in further conversation. I quickly ended the call. There was another significant matter, but I didn't mention it since Antonio seemed unaware. The next day, Nick called. "We'll be there soon." A phone call. "Didn't Antonio tell you? I moved out." "Really?" Nick sounded surprised but didn't press further. In fact, I sensed more relief than shock in his voice. "Cool. Mom's not there. We can do whatever we want then. You're not coming back, right?" "That's right." I always sensed Nick found me bothersome. He seemed displeased I didn't pamper him like a biological mother might. "You're not as kind as other women," he once said as a child. I thought I was raising him with love, so he wouldn't struggle later in life. "Well, it's easier for both of us. Laura was uncomfortable too. So, see you." That was like his father, always adding one extra, unnecessary comment. I pondered this after hanging up. That day, I was a bit on edge, unable to focus on work. I half expected a call about the furniture and appliances. Laura once said, "It must be nice to have all these appliances for an easy life." I secretly thought their visit was to take advantage of that. But contrary to my expectations, no call came that day. Finally, at the end of the month, Antonio called. Scarlett?" His voice lacked confidence, making his intention clear. But I played ignorant. "Yes? It's about the rent." "Yes? What about it?" He struggled to say it, but he wanted to talk about rent. Antonio and I used to pay $1,700 for the condo rent. I was the one who paid it all. There's no way Antonio, with his retirement, could afford it. He might manage for a while with his retirement fund, but it would eventually run out. He called me, but hesitated to speak his mind. I had to prompt him. "What? You're not expecting me to pay the rent for a condo I don't even live in, are you?" No, that's not. You were the one who insisted I leave, right? And now you're coming back to me?" That's not something Antonio's pride would allow. As expected, he changed the subject. "Scarlett, are you doing okay? You know, with a place to live?" "Yes, I managed to find a place, thanks to some connections. I'm living comfortably." Saying this left no room for him to ask me to return. I had no intention of going back, but just in case. Oh, okay. Nick and Laura were saying they miss you. I thought maybe you'd consider coming back. Such words were unusual for Antonio. He must be really desperate. But I had no intention of returning. Oh, really? I thought they disliked me. No, that's not. Well, it doesn't matter. I have something important to discuss, so I'll come over. Yes, there was a vital matter to discuss for my future. Antonio replied. All right, I'll be waiting. Cheerfully. Later, I visited the condo for the first time in a while. Long time no see. Antonio was dressed up unnecessarily. No matter how much he dressed up, it was pointless. I walked down the hall and into the living room, where Nick and Laura were sitting. Clearly, they couldn't live with nothing. New sofas, tables, and a fridge were installed. Nick waved casually, and Laura, though glaring, greeted me. The atmosphere was tense. I wanted to finish what I came for and leave. I sat down as Antonio urged. So, what did you want to talk about? Grateful he brought it up, I started the conversation. I thought it's better to handle this sort of thing sooner rather than later. Antonio turned pale the moment he saw what I held out. You're planning to divorce me? He was visibly shaking, looking at the filled-out divorce papers. Yes. Ever since you told me to leave, I've been intending to. Did you really say that without thinking? Antonio fell silent. He probably did. He tends to blurt out things in the heat of the moment without thinking ahead. This habit had caused him troubles at work several times. The last time you said all those terrible things, I don't want to see your face. There are other women. And what else? Anyway, at that moment, I couldn't see a future with you anymore. He must remember saying those things. Antonio kept his head down, sweating. Yeah, I said it. But that was not really what I meant. You can say such things even if they're not in your heart? I'm appalled. Well, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I was shocked. I can't do this anymore. That's all. Facing Antonio, our eyes met. He immediately flinched and looked away. Can't you reconsider? We've come so far together. I've come this far only to be told such things. I can't do this anymore. I can't be with you. As I firmly stated, Antonio let out a long sigh. The room was enveloped in a painfully awkward silence. The silence was broken, surprisingly, by Laura. Excuse me. I'm the one who's been most inconvenienced here. I turned to Laura, tilting my head, and she glared at me with eyes full of resentment. What do you mean? I thought this place would be perfect with Scarlet around, clean, and full of the latest appliances. I came here expecting to be pampered, but instead, I'm caught up in this marital mess. It's a huge nuisance. Laura sighed even louder than Antonio had earlier. She was angry with me for not meeting her expectations of a princess-like pampering. That is a huge misunderstanding. If she's unhappy, she could go back to her own home or anywhere else. But she chose to stay here. When I said this, Laura's face turned red. What's with that attitude? I came all the way here for you. I never asked you to come. Laura looked like she was about to scream. Her breathing was heavy with anger. But it's absurd. I had such high hopes after talking to Antonio, and now this. It's too much. Laura finally burst into tears. Nick tried to comfort her. But this made a little sense. This explained Antonio's excessive grandparent fever. It was driven by Laura's expectations. Antonio, flattered and relied upon, must have gotten carried away. But it doesn't change anything. Laura was inconsolable, and Antonio remained frozen, sweating. There was no point in staying. There's no use staying here. I'll leave. We can settle the divorce through lawyers. As I stood up, this time Nick shouted, You're running away! Shaking off your responsibilities and causing trouble. I was stunned by the absurdity. It's also good to have a grudge. approaching Nick, who was sitting close to Laura. I found myself naturally looking down at him. What's wrong? How old do you think you are now? Huh? I'm 35 years old. I took a deep breath and glared at him. So what responsibility do you think I have? Taking care of a 35-year-old son and his wife, or a 60-year-old husband? Nick was speechless, eyes wide. I couldn't hold back any longer. You're all adults. Enough is enough. Who's causing trouble? Using my efforts as a stepping stone while expecting me to always smile and comply. Calm down, Mom. Don't act like a child now. I shouted so much I was out of breath. I took a moment to breathe deeply. At least. Nick, I always cared about you, raised you as my own. But maybe I failed to convey that. Nick started to say something but fell silent. I grabbed my things and quickly left the room. No one followed me. Later, Antonio agreed to the divorce easily. No alimony. He mentioned moving out since he couldn't afford the condo. Antonio had never done housework before. Living alone would be hard for him. The letter passed through the lawyer, written in Antonio's familiar handwriting. Thank you for everything. Simply said. He tried to reconcile, but I firmly refused, and he seemed depressed. Nick and Laura decided to go back to Laura's family home. Laura complained, but Nick persuaded her. After the divorce, Nick called once. I'm sorry for everything. I'll try to be a parent like you, he said shyly. Maybe Nick hadn't hated me as much as I thought. I ended up buying the new house I was renting and still live there. Work is going well. I was tired right after the divorce, but now I feel refreshed. It's nice not having to take care of anyone. I'm not sure how many years I have left to work, but I'll do my best. Enjoying my private life too. And secretly, I still wish for Nick's happiness. From Bonnie to Brandy, a delivery. I wonder why Bonnie would go out of her way to send me a gift. What's the wind bringing now? Tentatively opening the envelope, it contained something like fabric, and upon unfolding, it turned out to be an apron. But I've never worn an apron like that, and at first glance said, sending something like this for a gift is definitely odd. My daughter Jeanette, with a pale face, said hurriedly, Mom, let's just throw this away quickly. In the afternoon, my eldest son Smith came visiting, holding a parcel in his hands. Mom, it's Mother's Day today, isn't it? Sorry, I haven't done anything for you till now. Here, a present. What's wrong? Something bothering you? Smith, sensing the somber mood between me and Jeanette, asked. Actually, before you came here, she received a gift from Bonnie. That's right. She had been looking through an apron catalog for a while. Yes. Bonnie bought that apron and sent it to Mom. That's great, isn't it? So? Show me what the apron looks like. Smith was excited, unaware of the situation. As I struggled to respond, Jeanette glanced towards the trash can. What? What's in the trash can? Seeing inside the trash can, Smith's demeanor changed. What is this? Bonnie took the trouble to pick this out. Apologize to Bonnie. Can you still say the same after seeing this? Can you blame her? Jeanette carefully lifted the apron from the trash and spread it out wide. The moment Smith faced the unexpected reality, his expression froze. What is this? It can't be. My name is Brandy, 56 years old. A very ordinary housewife blessed with 2 children, but soon after my eldest son entered middle school, his father passed away due to illness. Fortunately, we had life insurance, which provided enough payment to support the children, and our life was stable. Although financially we were not inconvenienced, raising 2 children was not easy. Especially my eldest son, Smith, who always talked big but never stuck with anything. and would give up at the slightest obstacle, a troubling character. In high school, after hearing in a special class about how becoming a civil servant meant a secure life, Smith came home and declared, "I'll become a civil servant." But upon realizing his academic performance and the reality of the highly difficult civil service exam, his spirit broke. "I never really thought you could become a civil servant." I laughed it off, but Smith never mentioned his goals again. "Well, just study adequately, get into a university with a name, and join a company with a stable salary." His big dreams gradually turned into smaller goals, and eventually, he managed to get a sales job at a small company. "Living a stable life isn't so bad." I quietly continued to watch over Smith. Meanwhile, Jeanette, my younger daughter, was always a good student, excelling in her studies and always at the top of her class. A well-behaved child who took the initiative to do everything from cleaning, laundry, cooking, to washing dishes, she was easy to raise. Jeanette, who always achieved her stated goals, declared during high school career counseling, "I want to work at a major cosmetics manufacturer." Following that, she self-studied everything from cosmetics knowledge to business manners and successfully landed a job at her dream cosmetics manufacturer. With both children moving out for their jobs, I now live alone. Not hearing the children's lively laughter or their arguments suddenly made me feel lonely. The only joy in my life now is the occasional phone calls from my children. One day, Smith called, sounding quite formal. "Actually, there's a woman I'd like to introduce to you, Mom," he said, sounding confused. When someone mentions introducing a woman, even the least perceptive person can guess it's a fiancé. Thinking about it, Smith is in his mid-20s. About the same age my husband and I got married, so it's not surprising he has someone he's thinking of marrying. Honestly, while I was surprised, I also felt a loneliness at the thought of my son being taken away by someone else, but I knew a mother has no right to hold back her adult son. Coming home for the weekend after a while, Smith brought a young woman by his side. "I'd like to introduce you. This is Bonnie. She works at a major apparel company." "Nice to meet you, Brandy." "I'm Bonnie." "Pleasure to meet you." The woman who introduced herself as Bonnie didn't have the flashy makeup common these days, but bowed with a low posture, leaving a refreshing and pleasant impression. Maybe because Smith chose her, my internal criteria for judgment was a bit softer than usual. Even when we sat down on the living room sofa, and I was about to serve tea, she hurriedly stood up. "Brandy, let me do that." "It's okay, you're a guest today, so please take it easy." Her well-mannered appearance boosted my impression of her significantly. Her smiling face with cute dimples contributed to a warm and fuzzy aura. "I see, so this is what got you hooked." "Eh? What was that?" "Mom, did you say something?" "No, I didn't say anything at all." I laughed it off. "More importantly, I'm curious about how you two met." When I asked with interest, Smith shyly admitted, "Actually, we only met at a mixer 2 weeks ago." Hearing this, I was so shocked I almost lost my footing. "Engaged after just 2 weeks of meeting? Isn't that a bit too fast?" "Do you think?" "I don't think it's too fast. Speed is normal these days, and I often hear about people getting married without dating at all. That might be true, but as a mother, I couldn't help but feel anxious." When Bonnie went to the restroom, I asked Smith, "I'll trust your choice since you picked her, but are you really sure about this? Are you prepared?" "Of course I am." "Mom, do you still not trust Bonnie?" I shook my head. "It's not about trust. Regardless of trust, I think getting engaged after only 2 weeks is too quick." Smith laughed off my concern. "Mom, I've heard that you had almost no courtship period before getting married after your matchmaking." An old story was brought up, reviving sweet and sour memories of my youth, but I coughed and brushed those memories aside. Still, back then, both our parents knew each other well, and the matchmaker was someone trustworthy. Your situation is not the same. Is that so? Well, regardless, the fact that Bonnie and I are getting married is unchangeable, and my feelings won't change even if you don't approve. Smith looked at me with a determined glare. I'm not going to fuss over your marriage to her. I trust you, so if you've decided on her, go ahead. Thank you. I knew you would understand, Mom, Smith said, his eyes shining. Well, Bonnie seems like a sincere woman, and I'll accept the engagement, but how about dating for about a year first? To understand what kind of person the other is before making any decisions. To avoid regrets later. I meant it as advice out of concern, but Smith seemed not to take it well. You might have just met Bonnie today, but I've been with her for 2 weeks and feel I understand her well enough. I can't wait a year. Smith's resolve seemed unbreakable. When Bonnie returned from the restroom. Anyway, we will definitely build a wonderful family, so please watch over us warmly. Saying this, the young couple left my home, and 2 months later, they had their wedding. A few days after that, I received a call from Smith informing me that Bonnie had quit her job to become a housewife. That's how it's going to be, so, see ya. Wait a minute. Are you sure that's okay? Bonnie quitting her job is also for me. She says it's better for raising children. And you know, Mom, you want to see your grandchildren soon, right? This is also for you. It felt like I was being smoothly convinced. The swift developments left me feeling a bit left behind. Smith, you rushed into marriage, but are you really okay with that woman, Bonnie? Jeanette expressed her worries over the phone, but I responded with a wry smile. What's done is done. All we can do now is watch over them warmly. That's true. Both Jeanette and I had our reservations, but we reluctantly agreed. Time flies, and it's already been 4 years since Smith and Bonnie got married. Yet, I haven't heard any news about them having children. I was told Bonnie quit her job to focus on starting and raising a family, but with no signs of that happening, I couldn't shake off my uneasy feelings. However, this is something that's bestowed by heaven, so fretting over it won't change the situation. Thinking it would only add psychological pressure on them, I consciously avoided bringing up the topic of children in front of Smith and Bonnie. Smith and Bonnie would visit during their substantial holidays, but beyond that, we hardly had any interaction. Still, I had no particular complaints as Bonnie always played the role of a good daughter-in-law in front of me. She seemed to manage household chores quite well, and there was nothing for me to nag about. However, at a family gathering, I heard some unsettling rumors about Bonnie. I went to greet Smith at his home the other day, and it seemed like they were living in quite strange circumstances. Really? I haven't heard anything like that. It was unexpected news to me. I had never heard from Smith himself about any troubles at work. But it's entirely possible he chose not to talk about the real situation to avoid worrying anyone. Thinking it would be cruel to pry. I leave Smith to manage his own affairs, so I don't think I should interfere. But then, making sure no one else was around, a relative whispered. The problem isn't Smith, it's his wife, Bonnie. She's apparently addicted to online shopping, spending most of the income Smith earns. No way! I instantly dismissed the relative's claim. I had only met Bonnie a few times, but she seemed serious and responsible, not the type to indulge in luxury to the point of bankruptcy. It's not just me. Other relatives and acquaintances have all said the same. They don't trust her. The relative's earnest expression made the shadow of worry in my mind grow. When I later mentioned it to Jeanette, she wasn't surprised at all. I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily, Mom, but I've heard those rumors too. Suddenly feeling dizzy, I lost my balance. Hey, are you okay, Mom? Thank goodness Jeanette was there, but my heart sank into darkness. Anyway, I don't trust that woman, Bonnie. We need to have a serious talk with her soon. I stopped Jeanette. Could you leave this to me? I'll talk to Bonnie directly and find out what's really going on. Do you want me to come with you? Jeanette looked worriedly at me. I'm fine. Despite appearances, I've successfully raised 2 children on my own. That's true, but I'm still worried. What if that woman, Bonnie, says something hurtful to you? Indeed, my distrust towards Bonnie was growing. But Jeanette's kind words inspired me, giving me a sense of courage. If Bonnie says or does something awful, you'll let me know right away, okay? Later, I stepped into the apartment where Smith and Bonnie lived for the first time. I had suggested visiting several times before, but each time Smith would say, I'm busy with work, and Bonnie thinks it would be awkward to be alone with you. Given such responses, I hesitated to visit. As a mother, I was naturally concerned about whether my son was truly happy. But this time was different. Regardless of what Smith said, I had to verify Bonnie's true character for myself. When I rang the doorbell, Bonnie answered with a surprised look. What's the matter? Brandy, if you were coming, you should have told me in advance. She said in a fluster, but properly prepared slippers and led me to the living room. Watching her serve coffee to a guest, as a housewife made me momentarily forget the rumors about her splurging on shopping. Smith is at work right now. I know. I came to talk to you today. A look of caution appeared on Bonnie's face. I was sure she knew what this was about. I've heard from others that you're addicted to online shopping. Then Bonnie, obviously irritated, TCH, made a strange noise, audible to me. So what? It's my money. I can spend it however I want, can't I? She defiantly stated. This was her true nature. I felt a fear as if my heart was being squeezed. So, is it true? Are you really living beyond your means and struggling? Bonnie sighed deeply. This is our issue. It's not something for you to worry about, so please leave. She stood up, frowning, and tried to usher me out. But I couldn't just back down and leave quietly. You said it's your money, but isn't Smith the only breadwinner now? You've quit your job, so can you really say that? Bonnie, with her long black hair, frantically ran her hands through it. It's all for having and raising children. I'm trying to give you a grandchild. That's why I decided not to work. But it's not going as planned, so of course, I get stressed every day. What's wrong with a little shopping? Do you, an outsider, have the right to stop me? She laid out a one-sided and selfish argument. That's a different matter. I tried to counter calmly, but even that seemed to annoy Bonnie. How dare you meddle in our private life? Get out! She almost threw something at me, spitting words with fierce anger, leaving me no choice but to flee. It appeared Bonnie disliked anyone interfering in her affairs to an extreme degree. Convinced of this, I decided to reconsider my approach to Bonnie in the future. The second Sunday of May arrived. This day is Mother's Day, a special day when children across the country express their appreciation and thanks to their mothers. Every year around this time, I feel restless and uneasy. Returning from shopping, I saw Jeanette's car pulling into the garage. I just got back, perfect timing. Jeanette got out of the car and from the back seat, she took out a bright red carnation bouquet. Thank you for everything, Mom. Please stay healthy and live a long life. Hey, I'm still in my 50s. Isn't it too early to be concerned about living a long life? I said, trying to play it off, and Jeanette laughed. My apologies, how rude of me. She bowed deeply in an exaggerated manner and apologized. Did you keep tonight free? I've booked us a reservation at a new restaurant. Thank you. I'm always causing you trouble. It was a given that she would take me out for dinner each year, so I had already cleared my schedule in anticipation. I usually avoid luxury, but I allow myself to indulge in my daughter's kindness on this day. Then, a delivery truck turned into our narrow residential street. Considering it was Mother's Day, I figured the delivery service must be busy, but then the truck stopped in front of our house. It looks like it's for me. Who could it be from? I tried to think of anyone besides Jeanette who might send me a gift, but couldn't come up with anyone. The driver took a package wrapped in an envelope from the truck and approached us. After confirming our names and address, he said, "This is a delivery from Bonnie to Brandy." Jeanette and I looked at each other in surprise. Holding the package, we stood dumbfounded at the entrance for a while. That Bonnie would send me a present for Mother's Day. What kind of turn of events is this? As we watched with caution, Jeanette also seemed suspicious. Be careful, Mom. There must be some catch to this, it's scary. She frowned deeply. Tentatively opening the envelope, it contained something like fabric, which unfolded to be an apron. However, I never actually wore the apron. The moment I saw it, I remarked, "Sending something like this, that woman must be out of her mind." Jeanette, with a pale face, said, "What is she thinking? Just throw it away quickly." Even though it was sent by my son's wife, I felt no guilt about discarding it. In fact, neither Jeanette nor I could think of any option other than throwing it away. In the afternoon, Smith came by, holding a parcel. "Mom, it's Mother's Day today. I haven't done much for you until now, sorry. Here, a present." Before Smith could hand me the parcel, Jeanette snatched it from him. "Let me see it first. I'll check what's inside." "What are you doing? It's an expensive watch I bought from Tiffany's. Handle it with care." Smith was indignant at Jeanette's rough handling of the parcel. Jeanette opened the box and checked inside, but nothing seemed amiss. "All right, it's fine. Here, Mom, a present from Smith." "Thank you. I'm relieved it's something decent." "What's with that reaction? I thought you'd be happier." Smith was noticeably angry and disappointed, expecting a more joyful response. "It's just that we were suspicious because you rarely bring gifts." "Don't be misleading. What's that supposed to mean?" "I just wanted to start building a respectable family now that I'm married too. I thought I shouldn't forget to thank Mom, that's all." I forced a smile I had forgotten. "Thank you. I am really happy about this. What's wrong? Did something bad happen?" Smith sensed the somber mood between me and Jeanette and asked, "Actually, before you came here, we received a present from Bonnie too." I hesitated to finish my sentence. "Eh? I didn't hear anything about that. Now that you mention it, she was looking at an apron catalog." "Yes. Bonnie bought that apron and sent it to Mom." "That's great, then. She cares about you too. So, what does the apron look like? Show me." Unaware of everything, Smith's eyes sparkled with excitement, but Jeanette grimly glanced at the trash can instead. "Eh? What's in the trash can?" Smith walked towards the trash can. Seeing what was inside changed Smith's expression dramatically. "What's this? What does this mean? Don't tell me this apron was sent by Bonnie for you, Mom. It's cruel to throw away something Bonnie carefully chose. Poor Bonnie. Apologize to her. As Smith attempted to retrieve it from the trash can, Jeanette warned. Be careful. Smith, don't hurt yourself. Her tone was sharp, yet it carried Jeanette's concern for Smith. Smith's movements halted upon touching the apron. What do you mean? Jeanette carefully lifted the apron from the trash can for Smith. Can you still say the same after seeing this? Can you still criticize our mom? She showed the apron's lining. The reality, unforeseen, froze Smith's expression. What's this? No way. The lining was filled with countless needles. Had I worn it without noticing, I could have been injured all over by now. This is the reality. This is her true nature. Now you understand, right, Smith? What kind of person Bonnie is. Even confronted with the truth, Smith seemed paralyzed, unable to believe. This is a serious crime. Both Mom and I are considering whether to report this to the police. Suddenly, the landline phone by the entrance rang loudly. Answering it, I heard an unwanted woman's laughter from the other side. Ah, Brandy. Did the package arrive okay? I specified the time, so I thought it should have arrived by now and decided to call. How can you do such a terrible thing so easily? Bonnie, without a hint of remorse and almost mocking me, said, It's your own fault. You always interfere in other people's private lives, so I just gave you what you deserved. You brought this upon yourself. Oh, if you got hurt, next time I'll send you iodine or Band-Aids. I'll pass, since it didn't turn out the way you wanted. I wasn't injured. Smith, who had been silently listening to our conversation, started to tremble. I need to step out for a bit. With tears in his eyes, Smith rushed out of the house. The next day, Smith returned and confessed that he had a heated argument with Bonnie rather than a discussion. I've decided to keep some distance from her for a while. I never imagined she would do something so foolish. According to Smith, it was unexpected for Bonnie that Smith would come back home at that time. Bonnie wanted to secretly harass me without Smith finding out, but her plan backfired when Smith learned about it. Panicked, Bonnie rambled. The needles in the apron must have been the delivery person's doing. Maybe a driver fed up with their harsh work conditions did it as a form of protest. But even Smith, as naive as he is, could see through her lies. You should be thankful we didn't report you to the police, Smith said sternly, and Bonnie smirked. So what? Are you going to leave me? I don't care either way. Living with you has been bothersome and boring. But Smith, not wanting a divorce, hastily suggested, Let's separate for now. We need a cooling-off period. But no divorce. I love you. Why separation? Normally, this would lead to a divorce. Hearing Smith's story, Jeanette raised her voice in panic. Why settle for just a separation after everything Mom's been through? I'm thoroughly disappointed in you, Smith. Jeanette sighed in frustration. I then asked Smith a question that had been bothering me since he announced his marriage. Why did you decide to marry her in the first place? Smith squirmed uncomfortably. Well, that's something I can't really say to others. But Jeanette, disappointed in Smith, pressed on. Speak up. It's just, we were compatible at night. Both Jeanette and I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Smith, who had never been popular with women since his student days, lacked immunity to love as an adult. It wouldn't have taken Bonnie much time to ensnare him. Apparently, Bonnie was quite skilled in bed. But now, that hardly mattered. So, what will you two do now? Divorce or not? Without hesitation, Smith said. No divorce. I plan to mend things with Bonnie once the dust settles. Feeling Smith's unwavering resolve, I lost all will to persuade him further. Do as you please. If you want to reconcile with Bonnie, I won't oppose it. But don't involve us anymore, and don't cross this house's threshold again. That's my condition. I pushed him away coldly. Smith remained silent for a while before nodding slowly. I understand. I won't trouble either of you any further. With that, he left the house. Smith later attempted to repair his relationship with Bonnie, but why am I always the bad one? So, it's not wrong for your mother to intrude into my private life. Let's get a divorce. Bonnie initiated the divorce. Mom, I finished work early today. Can I come over for dinner? I'll bring the ingredients. You're always welcome here. I'd love to have you. And there's someone I'd like to introduce to you soon. He's a senior from my university days. From work troubles to relationship advice, my good relationship with my daughter continues. As for Smith, facing divorce papers from Bonnie. Just sign here, and it's done. Despite being hopelessly unable to let go, rumors say Smith still follows Bonnie around. Though it pains me to worry about my son, as long as he doesn't change his mind, we've decided not to reach out to him. I pulled out something from the back of my closet, enveloped in the scent of mothballs. Jeanette, I want you to wear this dress at your wedding. Mom, you're getting ahead of yourself. You haven't even been introduced to him yet. I secretly harbor a dream. For Jeanette to marry, have children, and occasionally bring her kids to visit this house.